"Can you pretend to be my date?" she asked the single dad CEO millionaire, who fell in love for real. The marble floors of the Crystal Bay Hotel gleamed under Chloe Bennett's sneakers as she pushed the towering wedding cake through the grand lobby. Her delivery uniform was spotless, but it did nothing to shield her from the sting of every chandelier's reflection, every polished surface that made her feel like an outsider in a palace. She tugged nervously at the end of her blonde ponytail and kept her eyes down. The concierge barely looked at her as he pointed toward the main hall. "They want the cake inside. Set it by the stage." Chloe nodded silently and pushed the cart forward, her fingers trembling around the handle. She stepped through the open doors and stopped dead. There he was, Derek, the man who had left her standing alone in a white dress 2 years ago, with guests waiting and a heart in ruins. Now, dressed in a custom tuxedo, laughing with guests, a champagne flute in hand. His eyes caught hers. For a moment, he looked surprised, then amused. He took a step toward her, leaned in just enough for his voice to slice beneath the music. "Well, well, Chloe Bennett, after all this time, did you ever find a guy who wasn't just in your imagination?" Before she could respond, a sharper voice joined his. "Is that her?" a woman asked, stepping beside him. Derek's mother, the same woman who had once called Chloe a temporary phase with cheap lipstick. Her eyes raked Chloe up and down. "I suppose we should be thankful Derek came to his senses. So, dear, what are you now? A cake courier?" Laughter bubbled around them. Someone nearby whispered, "That's her? The one he almost married?" Chloe stood frozen, pulse pounding, her hands clenched into the fabric of her skirt. Derek smirked. "You know what? You should come tonight. The reception's going to be amazing. Bring a +1, if you have one." The room spun for a moment. She managed a tight nod, turned on her heel, and pushed the cart out faster than she meant to. Her eyes burned, her throat tightened. She didn't even realize she had made it to the bar until she was already sitting on a stool, hands shaking in her lap. She didn't order anything. She just needed silence. That was when she felt it, someone looking at her. She turned. A man sat 2 stools down, broad shoulders, black suit tailored to perfection, quiet strength in his posture. He wasn't drinking, just turning a glass slowly between his fingers. His eyes met hers, dark, steady, unreadable. Aiden Blake. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. Chloe's heart was still racing. Her face still burned. She should have said nothing. She should have left. But her voice betrayed her. "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend tonight?" Silence. Aiden blinked, once. His brows lifted, almost imperceptibly. Chloe tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out hollow. "Sorry, that was forget I said anything." He set his glass down carefully. "Why?" Her lips parted. No answer came. He studied her, really studied her. Not the clothes, not the flushed cheeks, but the pain behind her eyes, the pride that still stood, even when everything else had crumbled. Finally he said, "On one condition." She blinked. "My daughter comes with us." It was the last thing she expected to hear. Her breath caught, but there was no sarcasm in his tone, no amusement, just quiet, firm intent. Chloe hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Aiden extended his hand, not quite a handshake, not quite a promise. And just like that, the deal was made. The sun had barely dipped when Chloe arrived outside the Crystal Bay ballroom, the blue pastel gown fluttering softly against her legs. It was a rented dress, modest, vintage, just a little too long in the sleeves, but it made her look like she had wandered out of another world, innocent, soft, like someone who did not belong in a room full of sharpened smiles and whispered judgments. She kept tugging at one sleeve, trying to make it sit right. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Aiden stepped out first, adjusting the cuff of his suit, then turned toward the other door and opened it. The real showstopper wasn't him, but the little girl he gently lifted out, a vision in pink chiffon and sparkly shoes, her curls bouncing like sunlight spun into ringlets. "Sophie," Chloe blinked. "You really brought her?" Aiden gave a faint, amused shrug. I do not lie to my daughter." And she insisted. Sophie wrapped her arms around his neck, then stretched a hand toward Chloe with no hesitation. "Hi, I'm Sophie. Are you Daddy's princess tonight?" Chloe smiled, surprised at the warmth blooming in her chest. "I guess I am." Sophie grinned wider. "You look like one." It was the first genuine laugh Chloe had let herself have all day. Inside the hall, gold lights glistened off chandeliers, and a soft symphony played over the chatter of well-dressed guests. The moment Chloe and Aiden entered, his hand gently, formally resting on the small of her back, all heads turned. Whispers trailed behind them like perfume. "Who is he? He looks like a billionaire. Wait, is that Chloe? With a guy who has a kid? She's what, 25? Already playing stepmom? Maybe she stole someone else's husband." The judgment landed in waves, not shouted, but sharp all the same. Chloe felt them before she heard them. Her spine straightened, but her eyes dropped. The old burn of shame prickled her cheeks. Sophie, still in her father's arms, leaned over. She kissed Chloe's cheek softly and whispered, "Don't be sad. You look beautiful." The murmurs died instantly. Chloe froze. All eyes were on them now, but the judgment had shifted. Sophie's innocent gesture, so pure, so unexpected, turned the tide in a single breath. Even the sharpest tongues paused. Aiden's grip around Chloe's hand firmed. He didn't need to say anything. He simply walked forward with her, steady and calm, as though they had always belonged there. The evening went on in a haze of fake smiles and practiced toasts. Chloe kept close to Aiden and Sophie, answering polite questions and dodging cruel ones with grace. But peace never lasts long in places like this. Toward the cake table, ironically, the new bride made her move. She walked too close to Chloe, stumbled, fell hard. Gasps filled the room. "She pushed me!" The bride shrieked, grabbing her ankle, her voice trembling. The music cut off. Silence hit like a slap. Chloe took a step back, stunned. "I didn't—" "She did," someone shouted. "I saw it. She was jealous." Oh God, this is why he left her. Whispers rose again, louder now, harsher, the sound of public shame winding around her throat. But before Chloe could speak, Aiden stepped forward. He took Chloe's hand, calmly, like nothing had happened, then turned to the crowd. His voice was low, but it carried. "Some people look at others without ever seeing them. Always looking down, always looking up at themselves. When you do that, falling is inevitable." You could have heard a pin drop. The bride froze, mouth open. Derek's mother paled, and Derek, standing a few feet away, looked down at his drink, ashamed to even meet Aiden's gaze. No one said another word. Aiden turned to Chloe, nodded once. She exhaled the breath she had not realized she was holding. Sophie reached for her hand, and just like that, they walked away from the chaos together. Not as a real couple, not yet. But for one night, the pain belonged to someone else. Chloe had told herself it was just one night, one fake date, a ridiculous, impulsive decision sparked by pride and humiliation. She'd woken up the next morning almost certain she would never see Aiden Blake again. But life had other plans. 3 days later, as she balanced 2 cappuccinos on a tray and twisted around the corner of the cafe's counter, she froze. There, seated by the window with a book and a quiet calm that seemed to defy the bustle of the city, sat Aiden. Beside him, swinging her legs and humming softly, was Sophie. The tray trembled slightly in Chloe's hands. Before she could even speak, Sophie spotted her. "The princess in a blue dress," the girl squealed, sliding off her chair and rushing over. "Sophie," Aiden warned gently, starting to stand. But Chloe crouched just in time to catch the girl in a loose hug, laughing despite herself. "Hi, Sophie," she said softly. "You remember me?" Sophie nodded, proudly producing a folded sheet of paper from behind her back. "I drew this for you." Chloe unfolded the picture. Crayon lines showed 3 people holding hands beneath a rainbow. 1 tall man, 1 small girl, and in the middle, a woman in a sky blue dress. Something about it squeezed at Chloe's chest. She looked up. Aiden was already standing beside them, watching silently. "She wouldn't stop asking to come," he said, voice even. "It was either bring her or endure a 4-year-old mutiny." Chloe smiled, but her fingers gripped the drawing a little tighter. They sat for a few minutes, awkward at first, then easier. Chloe brought them cocoa and muffins, and Sophie chattered away about fairies and frogs and her favorite pink blanket. But when Sophie ran off to stare dreamily at the cookie display, Chloe leaned in slightly and murmured, "I don't think we should see each other again." Aiden didn't look surprised. "Because of Sophie?" "Because she's a child," Chloe said. "And I'm not part of your life. I don't want to confuse her. Or myself." He nodded once, respectfully. "I understand." But fate was already preparing its next twist. 2 nights later, Chloe's phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Her heart stopped as soon as she saw the caller ID. The hospital. She rushed there in sweatpants and a hoodie, breathless, her hands shaking. Her little brother, Noah, had collapsed from a sudden fever spike. He had a heart condition, one they'd managed carefully. But sometimes, things still spiraled. Chloe pushed through the emergency room doors. Her eyes widened. Aiden was already there. He was speaking quietly to the nurse at the front desk, Sophie asleep on his shoulder, wrapped in a fuzzy pink blanket. Chloe blinked, confused, breath catching. "What? How did you—" "I got a call from your landlord," Aiden said calmly. "You listed me as your backup contact when you applied for your apartment." Chloe stared. "I didn't want Sophie to see a hospital at night," he continued, "but she refused to stay home. And I didn't want you to be alone." Just then, the nurse returned and handed Chloe a form. "Your brother's already been admitted," she said gently. "Your friend took care of the intake. He also settled the deposit." Chloe stiffened. She turned slowly to Aiden. "You paid?" He didn't flinch. He didn't have insurance. The admission would have been delayed. Her voice sharpened. "You think I can't handle my own family?" "I think," Aiden said evenly, "sometimes people need help. And helping someone doesn't mean you think they're weak." "You barely know me," Chloe snapped. "Why would you do that?" A beat of silence. Then Aiden said simply, "Because I can, and because I wanted to." The moment held taut with pride and gratitude, and a storm neither of them quite knew how to weather. Chloe finally sat down, exhausted. Sophie stirred, still half asleep, and reached for Chloe's hand without opening her eyes. And for the first time, Chloe didn't pull away. The offer came 2 days after Noah was discharged. They were standing outside the hospital, the morning sun barely warming the concrete. Chloe was running on 0 sleep and caffeine fumes, her eyes swollen but dry now. Aiden had waited with her the entire night, quietly keeping Sophie entertained in the cafeteria. "I need someone to assist with events at my resort," Aiden said as he adjusted Sophie's cardigan. "Part-time, flexible hours. Thought of you." Chloe blinked, caught off guard. "I'm a waitress, not exactly your usual hire. You're smart, organized, and I need someone who knows how to read a room." He met her gaze. "You did that flawlessly the other night." She hesitated. Her pride prickled. This felt like charity. "I'll think about it," she said carefully. 3 days later, the hospital bills came. She called him back. The resort was a glass and ocean dream. Palm trees swayed in manicured rows, and inside, the scent of lemon verbena and professionalism hung in the air. Chloe started slowly, helping set up a beach wedding, organizing floral arrangements, checking audio systems. Within a week, she was coordinating timelines with chefs and vendors like she had done it all her life. Aiden watched quietly from afar. She never barked orders. She charmed the stubborn sound guy, helped a nervous bride repin her veil, even lent her own heels to a bridesmaid who broke one before walking the aisle. The staff adored her. So did Sophie. The little girl made it her personal mission to visit Miss Chloe's office every afternoon after preschool. Chloe started leaving a pink cupcake on her desk, just in case. One Thursday, as Chloe tied ribbons on wedding chairs, Sophie wandered in with a crayon and climbed onto a nearby stool. "Miss Chloe," she asked between doodles, "do you have a mommy?" Chloe paused mid-knot. "I did," she said softly. "But she went to the stars when I was little." Sophie frowned. "Like my mommy?" Chloe nodded. "Yeah, kind of like that." Sophie hopped off the stool and wrapped her arms around Chloe's waist. No words, just warmth. Chloe smiled through a blur of tears she hadn't expected. Later that week, while sorting supply inventory in a dim back room, Chloe received another call about Noah's surgery schedule. The number sent her into a quiet spiral. She sat on a dusty crate, her phone in her lap, hands trembling. The estimate was more than she could cover, even with double shifts. She didn't notice Aiden had walked in. He stood silently for a moment, observing the tension in her shoulders. Then, without a word, he stepped closer, crouched beside her, and gently set something in her hands. A blue folder. Inside it, a company badge, an upgraded contract, and a health insurance form. "For full-time employees," he said. "Consider it official now." She looked at him, startled. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can." "But why? Why go this far for me?" He stood, brushing dust from his pants. "Because you're already doing more than most people would in your position. You're earning it every day." Her eyes burned. She clutched the folder tightly, afraid that if she let go, so would the control she'd spent years building. "You don't have to be afraid of needing help," Aiden added, voice softer now. "Strong doesn't mean alone." Chloe didn't speak, but later, as she left the storage room and saw Sophie skipping down the hallway, waving her crayon drawing, she felt something shift deep inside her. For the first time in years, she wasn't bracing for the worst. She was allowing herself to hope. Chloe had grown used to the soft thud of small feet pattering down the hallway. It was now a daily rhythm, Sophie appearing at her office door with a drawing in one hand and a million questions in the other. They made a tradition of it. After Chloe finished work, the two of them would bake together in the staff kitchen, simple sugar cookies, sometimes lopsided cupcakes. Sophie insisted on decorating them herself, always with too much pink frosting. One afternoon, Sophie brought crayons and asked Chloe to draw with her. "We're making a storybook for Mommy," she said matter-of-factly. "The one in the stars." Chloe hesitated, then sat cross-legged on the floor beside her. Together, they filled the pages with stick figures, hearts, flowers, and letters in uneven handwriting. On the last page, Sophie scribbled something and then ran off. That evening, Chloe stepped out into the backyard of the staff cottages. It was late, nearly 9, but the air was warm, and the garden was lit with soft fairy lights. She was about to head back inside when she saw Sophie crouched by the small flower bed. The little girl held a folded piece of paper and carefully, almost reverently, slipped it into a glass jar already half buried in the soil. Curious, Chloe approached quietly, then paused a few feet away when Sophie tiptoed back inside without noticing her. After a few minutes, Chloe knelt and gently pulled the note from the jar. The handwriting was messy but clear. "Dear Mommy, I met someone good. If you want her to stay with me and Daddy, can you make the flowers bloom early? Love, Sophie." Chloe's breath caught. She pressed the note to her chest, feeling something break and bloom all at once. No one had ever asked the universe for her before. Not like this. Not with the innocent hope of a child who saw love as something simple and whole. Her eyes filled with tears, spilling quietly down her cheeks as she looked at the small flower bed. And then, in the dim light, she noticed something strange. Tiny buds, no larger than buttons, had begun to open. Unseasonably early, pale yellow and violet, blinking up at the world. She stood there, still and overwhelmed, when Aiden's voice spoke gently behind her. "She hasn't written a letter in 2 years," he said, "not since her mom passed." Chloe turned, startled. Aiden held out a steaming mug of cocoa, his own gaze soft and unreadable. "She used to write one every week," he continued. "Then one day, she just stopped, said the stars weren't answering anymore." Chloe took the mug, her hands trembling. She wanted to say thank you, or I'm sorry, or even just breathe without her heart tightening. but all she could manage was, "I think they just did." Aiden nodded slowly, then looked at the blooming flowers. "She believes in signs, always has." Chloe sipped the cocoa, its warmth grounding her. Neither of them spoke for a while. There was only the quiet hum of night and the soft sway of garden lights overhead. Something unspoken settled between them, a delicate thread, drawn from Sophie's small, open heart to the two adults who were slowly, cautiously stepping toward something they had both sworn they no longer needed. Not love, but maybe a chance. Maybe a home. The weeks slipped by in quiet, almost domestic rhythm. Aiden found himself spending more time with Chloe, at first under the guise of necessity, a lunch meeting near her cafe, dropping Sophie off when she insisted on saying hi, picking her up after Chloe's shift so the three of them could have ice cream at the boardwalk. It was always casual, always with boundaries, but it was never quite business. Chloe never asked for more. She was careful with her smiles, always tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear whenever he looked at her too long. Aiden, for his part, was just as cautious. A gentleman. He drove her home but never stayed. He let their moments hang in the air without reaching for them. Until one night, Chloe did not show up for their usual quick dinner at the staff lodge. Sophie pouted through her pasta. She said she felt warm earlier, she mumbled. Aiden didn't hesitate. Within the hour he stood at Chloe's door, Sophie beside him, holding a small thermos of homemade chicken porridge. There was no answer at first, but the door was unlocked. He stepped inside, gently calling her name. Chloe was curled up on the couch, pale and feverish, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her cheeks were flushed, her breathing shallow. She stirred at the sound of his voice but did not wake. Sophie tiptoed in and whispered, "She looks tired." "I know," Aiden said softly, setting the food down. He knelt beside the couch, brushing a strand of hair from Chloe's face. Then, without thinking too hard, he dampened a cloth and pressed it gently to her forehead. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the ceiling fan and Sophie's quiet coloring at the table nearby. He made her a fresh bed, carefully lifted her, she was light, too light, and tucked her in with the same precision and care he once gave his late wife. But it was different now. There was something raw in how Chloe stirred when he pulled the blanket higher, how she turned slightly toward the warmth of his palm against her temple. He sat by her bedside until well past midnight, changing the cloth on her head, checking her temperature, just watching. Not as a rescuer, not as a man with a debt to repay, but as someone who no longer knew how not to care. Eventually, exhaustion tugged at him. He rested his head against the edge of the bed, and sleep took him. When Chloe opened her eyes hours later, it was morning. Soft gold light streamed through the curtains. And there, beside her, was Aiden, still in his dress shirt, tie loosened, his head resting on his folded arms. Her heart ached at the sight. For a long time, she just watched him. The crease between his brows, even in sleep, the faint stubble on his jaw, the way one hand still hovered near hers, as if ready to catch her if she fell. She reached out, almost without thinking. Her fingertips hovered just above his cheek. But then she paused, and pulled her hand back. Later that evening, Aiden stood alone in his study, the house dim except for the faint glow of the fireplace. He held a worn photograph in his hand, his wife Sarah, smiling on a beach years ago, wind in her hair. "I never thought I'd talk to you like this," he said quietly, his voice steady but low. He set the photo gently on the mantel. "I still miss you," he admitted, "and I probably always will, but—" He glanced toward the hallway, where Sophie had drawn a new picture, a house with 3 figures again. "But I don't think you wanted me to stay lonely forever." His hand dropped to his side, and for the first time in 4 years, he let go of the guilt wrapped in grief. Not to forget, not to replace, but to begin again. Chloe folded the letter twice, then once more, before slipping it into the envelope. Her fingers lingered on the edges. She had rewritten it 3 times, each version softer, but never easy. The handwriting was neat, careful. "Aiden, I never thought I'd meet someone like you. and I never believed I deserved to. I don't know when I started waiting for something real between us. Maybe after that first smile from Sophie. Maybe after your quiet hands brushed the fever from my forehead. But I'm scared. Scared I'll hurt her. Scared I'll hurt you. And most of all, scared I'll start to believe that I belong here, and that someday it'll be taken away. So I'm leaving before any of that can happen. Please tell Sophie I will always remember her. Chloe. She left the envelope on the kitchen counter, next to a small jar of wildflowers Sophie had picked during their last walk through the garden. Then she walked out the door, with nothing but a small suitcase and the memory of a man who had made her feel, for the first time in years, like she wasn't just surviving. The sky was pale blue as she boarded the morning train to the city, heart heavy but steady. The center was quiet when she arrived. The halls smelled faintly of disinfectant and crayons. She'd taken a position assisting the staff at a non-profit children's health center where her brother Noah had recently been transferred for ongoing cardiac treatment. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was where she felt she could be of use, where she didn't have to pretend. At the resort, Aiden stood in the kitchen, staring at the envelope. He'd just come back from a morning meeting, expecting Chloe to be in the office, maybe teasing Sophie with a pastry from the bakery downstairs. Instead, he found silence. The note was still warm from the morning sun. He read it once, then again, and again. He didn't say a word, but his knuckles whitened around the page. Later that day, Sophie refused to eat. She pushed her lunch away and crossed her arms. "Is she mad at me?" she asked. Aiden crouched beside her. "No, sweetheart, she's not mad." "Then why did she leave?" He didn't have an answer. Sophie grabbed a crayon and stormed off to her little table by the window. When Aiden looked over a few minutes later, she was drawing again. A house, a tree, and Chloe. Still there, still holding Sophie's hand. The little girl spoke without looking up. "I wrote to Mom, remember?" she said. "I asked if it was okay for Chloe to stay. I asked for the flowers to bloom, and they did. So why did she go?" Aiden felt something shift in his chest, a slow, aching pull that no business meeting or rational thought could fix. He reached out, brushing Sophie's hair gently. "Because sometimes," he said softly, "people leave before they believe they're allowed to stay." Sophie turned to him, eyes serious. "But we wanted her here." "I know," he whispered. That night, Aiden sat at his desk, Chloe's letter in one hand, a photo of his late wife in the other. For the first time, he didn't feel torn between them, just incomplete without Chloe. And he knew what he had to do. It was no longer about charity. It was no longer about pretending. It was time to choose, for real. The room was quiet, filled only with the soft murmurs of children and the turning pages of a fairy tale. Chloe sat on a colorful rug in the middle of the playroom, her golden hair tied loosely behind her neck, her voice calm as she read the final line of the story. The children clapped, some giggled, and a few climbed into her lap, asking for another tale. She smiled, gently promising, "Tomorrow," then stood and began tidying the books, not noticing the tall figure standing silently in the doorway. Aiden Blake watched her from a distance, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on the woman who had, unknowingly, changed the rhythm of his life. For a moment, he didn't move. He just stood there, watching the way her hair shimmered under the overhead lights, the soft way she touched each child's shoulder. She didn't notice him until the applause faded and silence settled. Chloe turned and froze. Her breath caught when she saw him, his eyes, his presence, the stillness that always seemed to carry weight. She instinctively stepped back, but Aiden stepped forward. "Don't," he said gently. "Please, don't run." He walked toward her, slow and steady, as the children began to scatter around them, laughing, skipping. Chloe held her hands together, unsure what to say, unsure what to feel. Before she could speak, he reached her and said, "I agreed to be your fake boyfriend once." His voice was quiet but firm, only to realize, "I never wanted to pretend in the first place." She blinked, eyes beginning to shine, but she shook her head slightly. "Aiden, you don't have to do this. You don't owe me anything." "I know." He took a breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I want to." At that moment, little Sophie ran into the room, pink dress fluttering as she rushed to Chloe and wrapped her arms around her leg. "I made this," she said proudly, holding up a drawing. On the paper, 3 figures standing in front of a small house, 1 tall man, 1 blonde woman in a pastel dress, and a little girl with a crown. "This is our home. Can we live there, please?" Chloe knelt down and held the drawing with trembling hands. Her heart felt like it would burst. She looked at Aiden, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure about this? I'm not perfect, not glamorous. I've never belonged in your world." Aiden stepped closer, reaching out to lift her chin gently. "You belong exactly where you are," he said. "With me, with Sophie. You have everything I didn't know I was missing." She hesitated. "But what if I mess it up? What if I hurt her, or you?" "You won't," he said softly. "You already healed something in both of us." Chloe looked at Sophie, who was now drawing hearts in the air with her fingers and whispering, "Please say yes." A tear slipped down Chloe's cheek. "Yes," she said. "I'll stay." Outside, the sun was setting. The sky turned golden as Aiden took her hand in his, and Sophie grabbed the other. They walked together toward the beach behind the center, sand cool beneath their feet. The waves lapped gently at the shore. The breeze played with Chloe's hair. Sophie twirled in the surf, laughing, the sound echoing into the coming twilight. Aiden leaned toward Chloe. "This time, we're not pretending." She smiled through the tears. "No," she said, "we're not." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of peach and rose, they stood side by side, 3 shadows, 1 family, finally whole. A love not forced, not faked, but chosen, piece by piece, moment by moment. Where pretending ended, and something real began. If this story moved your heart, made you smile, or gave you that little ache of something real, don't forget to show your love. Tap that subscribe button and smash the hype to keep supporting soul-stirring stories. We've got more heartfelt, slow-burn love stories just waiting to unfold, each one written to remind you that sometimes the best things in life begin with a question as simple as, "Can you pretend?" Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.